Obviously, it's not quite the same because I'm using an actual oil bath instead of a deep fat fryer, right? This will fry, but it's not a deep fat fryer. Okay, so right now my temperature is at 134 degrees Celsius. By the time I add all of this, the temperature is going to change drastically. Stand back. Right? Because anytime I put something cold into something hot, the temperature drops, right? Drops very fast. Okay, when I drop it in there, we need to start mixing it around because it's delicate right now, right? Those proteins are starting to set, all the starches are leaking out, right? So if I just leave it alone, I'll just get one giant potato cake. Well, that's not what I want, okay? So start stirring it around, stirring it around. Now, there are many, many options. We don't always have to double fry, but it does create super crispy fries. That's how they're really crispy on the outside, really tender on the inside. Okay, but we never want it to stick to the bottom. That's why your deep fat fryer is usually preferred because it's in a basket that you submerge and it never actually touches anything. Okay? You see tons and tons of steam. I should have the fan on, but it's really difficult to hear when I don't, so I'm have it off for your benefit. It's also going to make my face look amazing when I'm done, standing over this evaporating oil. Okay? But such is life. Okay? I do it until they float, and I do it until they start to turn brown, but you can see, obviously, soft as can be, right? Not really fried. Okay, so we're going to let those cool down. I can also cover these in a little bit of cornstarch if I want to. Just get them a little crispier. It pulls the moisture out. It creates a thin skin on there, right? So if you're at home and you're in a hurry, just put it in a bag with some cornstarch, shake it really hard, put it back in your fryer that's nice and hot. Okay? So I'm still losing temperature. What was 134 is all the way down to 118. So that's actually pretty cold, really. Right? That's down in like the 250s. In Fahrenheit, and it keeps dropping and dropping and dropping, okay? Which means it'll take longer to poach, which is good and bad. It's bad because it's going to take longer, but it's good because we're going to get more moisture out of it, right? Okay, so I'm going to let those go. I'm going to throw these in the freezer just to help set all of that moisture. That way when I second fry, that's better, okay? Any questions? Frying. You guys know it. It's very common. Yes, ma'am?
When you put the cornstarch on the fries, it doesn't make them like taste funny or?
No, it cooks off because like when I make onion rings, the onion rings are drenched in cornstarch.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. By the time we cook it, I mean, if you were to eat it raw, yeah, it'll taste really weird, but if you cook it properly, we cook that taste out. And you'll really understand that by the time you're done with your pastry training, because a lot of our jams, jellies, and things use cornstarch, and you cook it to the point where it's gone. Okay, that's one of the indicators that you cooked well with. So let's talk about grilling then. All right, today's kind of one of those days that I think is more or less useless because you guys are in Texas. Frying and grilling is kind of like what happens here, right? However, what type of cooking technique is grilling? Dry, very dry. Okay. When you baste something as it grills, like in barbecue or smoking, it's not the same as actual grilling as far as like the cuisson or the cooking technique. Okay, so we pull out our product. We need to dry it. Right? Get it nice and dry. You probably have to do it a couple times. And then the idea is that the grill is hot enough that when you put your product on there, the outside caramelizes right away. Sorry, you can back inside. You shouldn't ever need oil on your grill. If it sticks, your grill's not hot enough. Okay? It means that the protein kind of sank down in there and then it started to crust up, and that's why you have to rip it off there because it's not hot enough. Okay? So, my grill, nice and hot, should be. Right? And we're going to just do boneless, skinless chicken breast. You guys see this all the time at the grocery store, right?
Yes, sir.
We can season before, we can season during, and we can season after. Right? If you're going to baste it, obviously keep that in mind. But I have this pretty good hot. Okay? Periodically stirring. Keep it from creating that giant potato cake. Alright, so now when it comes to grilling, there's a couple things we need to keep in mind. One, we want it to grill evenly. So we try to trim up any like huge amounts of fat. And when we're grilling like this is a steel plate with grills, but when you think of grilling, you probably think of an oven pit over a flame, right? Now, with that situation, we have to be careful because if we have anything drip into the fire, we get flare up. right? Which will change your product because then it's being burned literally, right? So when we put this on here, we can put oil on this, right? Which will help, but not a ton. Okay, what I like to do, because this is already going, is I like to take just a little bit. Right? That way it's hot. I don't have to worry about it being cold oil. It's not actually going to cook my chicken, but it's thin enough to where it'll get on the whole thing. And then when we put it on here, it should start smoking, it should steam, it should make sound right away. That's us setting the outside protein. Okay, now, this is white smoke. Okay, that's super hot. Means my grill's probably technically too hot. But I'm trying to get what's called quadrillage. Alright? Quadrillage is when you see grill marks. Okay? Quadrillage is actually harder than it looks because what you're trying to do is get even grill marks, even color, even direction, even, right, throughout the entire thing. And this is fine because the chicken breast is nice and easy, but you see how it doesn't stick at all? Because my grill is nice and hot. You see how I have these nice black marks? Okay? But right here, it's not even. Okay? Perfect quadrillage is actually very difficult. Okay, we set it on the other way. Never press it because then it will also set down around your grill and it makes it difficult to work with, right? So we let that go. Now, I also have zucchini. It's the exact same thing, but it grills differently, right? Now, usually we always say use different tools for different items. Like you wouldn't put chicken in a saute pan and put zucchini right next to it. Okay? But in grilling, it's so hot and it's kind of open that we can kind of get away with it, right? Now, I would never stack like the zucchini on the chicken and then go with that, but it's something that I would think about. Okay? Check your quadrillage, it's important. If it's at 90-degree angles, it's great, but you'll see a lot of steakhouses, they're tighter, right? They get kind of a diamond shape. You'll see the picnic table look where it's kind of like a oval, whatever. The hard thing about it, again, is that it needs to be even in color. Okay, like this is close, but right here it's a little orange, here it's definitely blacker. One of those things that we have to worry about. Okay? So any questions about grilling? It's like ridiculously easy. Now, depending on what you're grilling, we have to keep in mind the size of our product, right? For example, that chicken is a dense protein. If I were to grill a leg, it would be considerably different than if I'm grilling this thin breast, right? Now, do I still have to cook it to 165?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, absolutely I do. I definitely still have to go with 165. Now, when you do quadrillage, you only want to see quad, as in 4. We don't want to see like 6, 7, 9. You don't rotate it like a little bit every 5 seconds. That way you get this really weird black streak on there. It might sound really cool, but it is not as good looking as you might think. Okay? So we're just trying to get the normal quadrillage. Now, if your grill's too hot, what will happen is you'll just cook the outside without cooking the inside. Alright, now we still want that quadrillage, we still want it hot enough where my protein doesn't stick to it, but we have to kind of know where we're going. Alright? Like ovens, it helps to know your grill, it helps to know what you're doing, it helps to practice more than 0 times, right? So with my vegetable, because it's much different, right, most people try and cut them super thin, which isn't going to do us any favors whatsoever, right? If we put something super thin on the grill, a lot of times it just kind of melts out. We need something a little thicker because as we go to flip it, you always grill both sides. Okay, you never grill just one side of something because then it's really uneven cooking. All right? When we go to flip something that's too flimsy, it's just going to fall apart and it's not going to be beautiful for us. Okay? So, gotta check the temp. Now we wait. You see, it's hot enough, nothing sticks to it. That's the key to grilling. When you're at home and you throw fish on there, fish is hard to grill, first of all, because it's so flaky. And second of all, usually people try to grill it too cold and it just kind of falls down in there and then you have to rip it off there and suddenly fish is a big disaster, right? Okay? It's always difficult to check the temp on a breast, like just an individual breast, but it still has to be done. Now, grilling, super easy, right?
Yes.
Yes, chef.
Frying, also super easy, right?
Yes, chef.
Okay, so I'm just putting the first fry on these for now, then we'll move on We'll crank up the heat and we'll do our second fry. Okay? Now, this is a straight fry. Right? All we're doing is put the product straight in the oil. We haven't done anything to it. I mean, we've rinsed it off because of its starch, which is actually kind of not a good thing because we do want that starch to create a crust on there, but we also don't want our potatoes to oxidize, right? So we have to be careful about that. But when it comes to onion rings, if I straight fry an onion ring, it's just going to kind of char up and burn because of all the internal moisture in this thing, right? It doesn't have a thick skin or any starch. So I've coated it in cornstarch, and then we'll dress it in something, right? We'll dredge it, and then we'll keep going from there. Can you give me a sheet pan, Jason? They're in the back. Now dredging, just like you see with fried chicken, chicken fried steak, all that stuff, there's a process to it. There's tons of different types of dredge or batter or whatever, right? When you eat at a lot of Asian restaurants, you'll see tempura. It's very common. And then Lydia, can I have those paper towels again, please? Thank you. So they're all different, but they have a procedure, so make sure you understand each procedure. The point of the breading is 1, to create a crispy skin, 2, to completely enclose whatever you're frying to protect it, and 3, just to prolong its shelf life. Okay, it's not just to taste good. It really is to protect the product. Because if I drop just an onion in here, it's gonna just burn really fast, okay? It's too delicate of a product, especially at the thickness we've cut them. So, start getting our stuff out, right? You see it floating on top. Obviously the tornadoes are having a little trouble. Say low. Right, the little bit of browning on the side is a good indication too. If it's slightly golden brown now, it'll probably be definitely golden brown in the end, right? Which is exactly what we want when we have French fries. Nobody wants blonde French fries. It's a bad idea, okay? So today we're dealing with wet and dry cooking techniques. But you see, we just have to follow the same rules. So what's the minimum internal temperature of a potato when I cook it? I mean, we don't really have one. 135 is safe, but that's still technically in the danger zone. So I would go like 136. Right? So we have to watch out for that kind of stuff. If there's not an actual degree, plus how are you going to temp these? You can shove a thermometer straight into the French fry? Good luck, right? What we're looking for is texture on a lot of these things, okay? You can eat raw potatoes. So we understand that relatively they're safe. I would definitely wash them, given the fact that they grow on the ground. But I've seen a lot of people who just kind of pick it up and eat it because they're crazy.
Yeah.
All right, you see how I can still see through my oil? Right, it's clearly darkening in color. At no time should you ever fry in anything that you can't see through. Okay? Even when it's a little brown, don't fry in that. That's disgusting. It tastes gross. Okay? Be a professional. Change out your oil. That's the whole reason we came down here. It's because I didn't want to deal with that fryer down there. It was black. Like, black. Reflective black. Like somebody poured caramel on it. I don't want to fry in that because I don't want to eat that. Okay, now we all know that fried food is unhealthy, correct? We know that. But it is delicious. So just know that whatever oil you use imparts some flavor. We're using straight canola oil today. It's pretty normal, pretty bland, pretty easy, pretty safe. It also has a very high flash point, which is why we use it. Okay, the flash point is the point at which this will just burst into flames. Okay, the flash point on this is very, very high, but on some of them, like your olive oils, the flash point is relatively low. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. Now, you'll see peanut oil in a lot of places, like Five Guys, the chain. That's what they use. They use peanut oil, right? They have to label it and they have to inform their customers because of allergies, right? So be very, very careful what you use. Okay? Any questions so far?
No, chef.
All right. So let's talk about onion rings and breading. Okay? When you have a breading station, there needs to be a process established. You need to have a procedure in place, and you need to follow it. Okay? Hopefully, you'll pay extra close attention to what you're doing. That way, you don't have a huge mess on your hands, like literally on your hands. Right? So I'm going to grab gloves just for my own sake. When we fry stuff, right, we're going to cook it all the way through, otherwise it would just be a hazard. But we still want to make sure that we don't have a huge mess all over the place. Always be Nolan, right? Just like always be on time. Just like everything else we saw in the video. Okay?
Okay, cool.
So, when you bread, I've taken onion rings, I've coated them in cornstarch. That cornstarch helps kind of suck the moisture out and gives a thin protective crust around my onion rings. Okay, onion rings are full of sulfur. That's what makes your eyes water. It's the sulfuric acid evaporates into your eyes. Obviously your eyes don't like that. They start to water to try and clean themselves. Right? I can stand over this all day and it's not going to do anything because the sulfur, the liquid, the moisture in our onion is being thickened by this starch. Okay? Now, your normal person is going to take this, drop it in the egg, shake it off, put it in the breading, and then put it in the oil. And then their hand's going to have this giant gunk on it. And then when they reach back in here, it just gets dirtier and dirtier. Right? When you do this, you need to have a system where one goes here, right? Then it goes in here, and then your opposite hand handles this. Okay, hopefully you'll have a basket or something a little more executive, but today this is what we're using. Okay, now if you have like a side towel, just go ahead and help yourself out. Now, a lot of your tempura batters or your beer batters have baking something in them, which helps it expand as it fries. This only has egg and breadcrumb. It will expand some, but not very violently, right? You know, you see those onion rings that have that huge layer, and then somewhere in the middle is that really thin onion. Okay, that's because they have a ton of baking powder or baking soda in there. While it's nice, it's also kind of wasteful, right? Same rules apply. The onion rings obviously are more likely to stick together, so we got to keep them moving around. Never throw everything in here right away because we need to check it out, right? Obviously, it's not very well protected. Okay, so what can I do? It's probably that the breadcrumbs are too thick. I could obviously thin those out. I could grind them back down. I could add a little bit of baking powder and turn this into more of a batter if I wanted to, right? But if my onion rings aren't completely coated, they're not really cooking very well. Jason, will you give me another sheet pan, please?
What's all in your breading mix? Baking powder?
No, this is just breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs?
It's eggs, cornstarch, breadcrumbs.
Is that straight eggs?
Straight eggs.
Seasoning in there.
Pure eggs, there's no seasoning.
Okay.
I always season my fried food afterwards. Because if I have a ton of aggressive seasoning, or even just normal seasoning, when I fry it, suddenly my oil is seasoned oil. Right? So everything I fry in there tastes like that, which may or may not be a bad thing, but sometimes I just want clean oil. Right?
So if you're like frying chicken or something, you do it all separate?
What's that now?
So if you're like frying chicken, you fry it all separate?
Yes. I don't know anybody who fries chicken with anything else.
No.
But the definition of southern fried chicken is that it is fried in shortening, not oil. Right? That's what makes it southern fried. So we never fry fries that way because it's too high a fat content. The fries will reabsorb it. What we do is we'll fry it in shortening. You can obviously fry in lard or something else, but that's not what southern fried is. When it comes to seasoning, obviously the chicken, like the breading is seasoned, but a lot of times with that, what we do is we soak the chicken for a couple days in buttermilk or something like that, and then we season that so we get more flavor on the inside. Okay, so, not bad, just not great. So how do we improve it? Simple. We make a paste that will actually stick to this. So, now that I have this, I have a little bit of cornstarch. If I turn my cornstarch into a bit of a slurry, if I turn it into a slurry, it's going to stick much better to my product.
Almost like a paste.
Yep, just make a little paste. And this way I'll actually be completely dressing my product, right? Before I'm just using a powder. Powders can flake off, they can obviously be dispersed. But if I make kind of a paste with it, then it will stick to my product that much better. Now this I could season, right? Because it's going to stick directly to my product. But it does have to be thick. Now, the order will always depend on what your chef wants, what you prefer. Okay, there's no rule that says it has to be eggs, then breadcrumbs. You can go breadcrumbs and eggs. You can go eggs, breadcrumbs. You can just keep going time and time again. Usually with chicken fried steak, it's breaded 2 or 3 times, right? And that's when it becomes like a huge mess. If you're trying to do